Get your sips in now. It's Family Matters with Kevin Petersen.
Hello, Jay Staples.
Wow. Are you refreshed? Are you hydrated?
LaCroix.
Oh, it kind of looked like a beer can at first. It kind of looked like the High Life, the champagne of beers.
So first of all, if I'm drinking beers, it's going to be a much bigger can than this. It's going to be malt liquor.
Are you a malt liquor guy?
Yeah, man. In high school, that's what we drank. And I look at these kids today slugging down the, White Claws, and so, I'm like, here's the difference between you and me. We were hitting White Claw. We were hitting malt liquor and Rumpelmans, while you little sissies are drinking White Claw and cherry flavored or berry flavored. But what do I
know? I started my college drinking career drinking wine coolers and Zimas, or I think it's Zimas or something like. Anyway, but all through my college career, I was called wine cooler. So anyway, but don't worry, folks. I quickly upgraded my drinking to more than wine coolers. But anyway.
All right.
Anyway, so what is going on? Any burning desires? Anything? We got a couple of questions. But anything on top of Kevin Petersen's mind?
Well, a couple of things. One, the world has righted itself in the sense that Reggie Bush got his Heisman Trophy.
Oh, Jesus. I thought this was actually going to be insightful.
This is so important. And Caleb Williams is about to be the first pick in the draft. So everything is back in its natural order with USC being in charge of everything collegiate football.
Going to the Bears, so that only means he's going to go, so I look forward to it. So
I know I got to tell you, that's the only thing I'm just like, man, it's like, it's so not fair.
Jesus.
Although I'll tell you, I did send you a podcast of the Huberman Lab where he talked.
I did get that.
And I think, at some point we may want to talk about that. That was fascinating about marijuana or cannabis-induced psychosis in adolescent and teenage boys. And I see that all the time. I'm working one right now, so I get it. I see it all the time. And this is the reality,
Well, it's happening in more cases, and it's the age-old question whether it's psychosis due to the marijuana or it's more, mental health, and so there's no telling and so forth. So it's tough with the assessment on my end. So with treatment placement, there's the domino effect on it it goes deep. So it absolutely needs to be talked about. So anyway.
So what you got?
Well, we the conversation that we had last week when we were talking about picking treatment centers and questions and so forth raised quite a stir. A lot. We've got a couple of questions that we're going to kind of combine into one and kind of want to make a discussion point there. So let's just make a discussion point around families want to know once they're in treatment, there's this, I think the question, I'll just pose it to you because it was in one of the questions. Their loved ones in treatment. Kevin, what do we do now? What is our role? What do we stand off? Do we wait for the phone to ring? What do we do?
That's a great question. And my position is, first thing is first, take a deep breath. We've got them to a place where they're safe and they're being taken care of, and that's just so critical. Next, but what I want you to do so we're going to imagine it's a family that's working with Kevin. So the book that I wrote, Families in Addiction, has basically 3 parts. Okay. The first part is triaging the crisis and getting them help. Okay. And so we're talking about that's already done. Now it's time to focus on the family and really address what's going on in the family system. So now it's important for me to educate the heck out of the family on addiction, codependency, and recovery. So my big things are, read my book, do my online class because it covers all these topics in depth, give homework. It gives lots of information that I want the family to get knowledgeable. I want them to watch Pleasure Unwoven from our friend Kevin McCauley. I want them to read Codependent No More. I want them to, learn more about codependency. I want them to learn more about trauma. We're going to read books like What Happened to You and The Body Keeps the Score. And we're going to have conversations about, initially the conversation is always going to be about the person that's in treatment, but I'm going to pull that conversation and turn it around and talk about the other people in the family and how we get everybody in the family help. Are there kids? The Betty Ford Children's Program is available and it's very affordable, if not free. Are you seeing a therapist? So 2 quotes that I gave a client this morning. First one was, healthy families come from healthy individuals. Healthy individuals work on their stuff. Everybody has stuff. And we'll be talking about your childhood. You're not responsible for their addiction, but you are responsible for how you respond to it. Part that I want to really dig into with the family and really focus while in the 30, 60, or 90 days that your person is in treatment. That I want to really dig in with you. What it's like in the family system to deal with this person and how we can change that.
So as far as the conversations with counselors and so forth like that, everyone wants to know, everyone seems to think there's this question, like, are they telling the real truth? How much, do we tell? Should I tell this story? Should I hold that back? Like, there's a lot of interest in what should be said within the communication with the counselor or something. And then as far as there's always this fear, like they're not going to tell the truth or they're holding back. Like what's the communication with the therapist? I think
Sure.
Families want to know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great question, and here's the thing, it's always important that the family members engage with the treatment center and give them a download on everything. And just say, hey, we just want to tell you our side of the story and just, drop everything. A good treatment center is going to have that conversation with the family ahead of time proactively. So I would say now we're back to the first part of triaging the crisis and putting them into treatment. A good treatment center is going to have an intake interview with the individual and with the family and sit there and talk about, what it's like as a family member and, kind of the stuff they've had to put up with. Sorry about that. What they've had to, what it's been like and what the experience has been and da 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 da. So that, to me, I'm sorry, I took it for granted that was already done. And then, the thing is for the family is it's really important not to try to control the treatment process and not to try to control what's going on. That's why it's important that they work on themselves with someone like me. And I'm going to be a broken record here because what goes on in the treatment center, right? There's 2 kinds of business, right? There's my business and not my business. What goes on in treatment is not my business. You are absolutely have the right to speak up and say, hey, I want to tell you what's going on from my position. 100%, no questions asked. But what the individual is working on and who they're engaging with and how, that's their job. That's their responsibility. And it's not your job to be the sheriff and monitor their process. It is your job to have good boundaries with them and say, hey, I want to make it clear you're not coming home unless there's significant behavior change. Yes, you got to be sober, but you got to get self-supporting and you got to get a job and, or go back to school or whatever. You got to get your act together, and then you got to change the way you behave, or you're not welcome here. And I think we should be talking about, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or a year of treatment / sober living, IOP, PHP. Those are the expectations that should be set ahead of time, so that the family can start digging in on their stuff as well.
Yeah. You mentioned boundaries and so forth. And, I love this show and I love these questions and more often than not, like we say it all the time. We don't know, the full story. We just know the questions and the emails and so forth like this. And this is, so in generic terms, we can only go by generic terms, and this is kind of a loaded question in a sense, but and we get a lot of kids questions, and I feel that, so we have a sister that is taking care of 2 or 3 young children, so I would assume probably under 6 or whatever it may be, taking care of her sister who keeps going in and out of treatment. And so the sister is once again in treatment again for the umpteenth time, whatever it may be. So ultimately, this is a long email. So let's just say so the sister has the kids and is waiting on the other sister going into treatment. So the question is, when does the sister who has built this family for these 3 small kids, while their mom is gone in and out of treatment and drug addiction and so forth, and she is already seeing the day, and thankfully she says the relapse happens fairly quickly, so there's not been the shifting of going back to mom and then going back. So, but in the past it has happened. So the sister wants to set clear boundaries as to, she wants to protect the kids instead of going back and forth. She wants to get an advice on what are some clear set boundaries as to, if you ever do want to get the kids back living with their mom, what does mom have to do or do for kids to get uprooted from a set, home to go back to mom? Does that make sense?
Totally. So the boundaries are always the same. I call this plan A. The boundaries are always the same. No drugs, no alcohol, and that has to be verified, especially when kids are involved. Now, the state's going to get involved in that process as well. But, we're talking about regular drug testing, regular breathalyzing by a third party. No one in the family does that. That's going to be done by an outside source. That's the first boundary. The second boundary is you have to be self-supporting. You have to get a job or go back to school or a combination of the two, but you got to be on your own 2 feet. That may look like, living in a state-sponsored sober living, or I don't know what, but you got to be able to provide for yourself and provide for your kids. So that's boundary number 2. Boundary number 3. Your behavior has to change. The sister's behavior has to change. By that, I mean, she has to be sober and stay sober. She has to engage in services, therapy, 12-step recovery, who knows what, whatever the she needs to get back on track. And she needs to be engaging with the family and change the way she's engaging with the family. And along the lines of all 3 boundaries, we're always going to offer a support system. It's not a punishment system. It's a support system. Oh, you're struggling with sobriety? Okay, great. Let's help you find that solution. Oh, you're struggling with finding a job or getting qualified? Great. Let's help you. We'll find a solution for that too. And you're having trouble, getting your act together, taking care of yourself? Great. We'll get you help for that too. We're always going to be supporting, because we want them to win. We don't want them to lose. And you can't punish somebody into good behavior. It doesn't work. So we're going to offer support. Whether or not the sister chooses to do it is up to her. And that's going to be all the evidence we need about whether or not she's actually doing the work to get better and get it together.
Is there a minimum sobriety time that she needs to get to?
I'm going to say that's probably going to be governed by the county or the state.
Okay.
I don't feel comfortable throwing in on that. I mean, I've worked those cases before, but 9 times out of 10, that situation is being monitored by an agency.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. There could be some court orders, some mandates. There's I would definitely look into that environment.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then there seems to be, there are questions in general about, they said that, you guys talk a lot about post-treatment kind of aftercare, IOP, PHP, sober living and so forth. And, they're kind of wanting to know, do you rely on, the treatment center? Do you does the family do their own treatment? Like, what's the process on let's just call it the aftercare suggestions?
So when someone leaves treatment, they should always be leaving with a discharge plan. And that plan should include, from what the clinical team says, this is what we think you should do. And I always tell people, the families that I'm working with, that is non-negotiable. So if the clinical team says, we think you need to go to PHP and IOP, for the next 3 months, then that's what and that's the boundary. Oh, well, the clinical team, the experts say this is what's necessary. Therefore, that's what's necessary. And that's what we're going to be doing. And we'll support that. But again, we'll support that process. And I think that's a good idea. Now, let's be realistic, right? If somebody is coming home and they have to go back to work and they have kids and okay, cool, I get it. Those are realistic. Now, a lot of those IOP programs do nighttime stuff or whatever, but we can also create an environment where they are being monitored for drugs and alcohol through there's in the mail stuff, there's sober links, there's lots of ways to manage that. Okay. If they need to go back to work full time and they can't do IOP, we can find a weekend IOP, we can find a nighttime. We will work with it. Again, we're not punishing someone. We're trying to find them a solution to help them get better. So each thing may require a little bit more work than the other, but we're going to make that work. That's our job. Yeah. Great questions.
And last one is, I don't really, they want to know, have you ever seen religion get in the way of recovery? And that's all the question is. And I've stared at it and from different angles, literally far away, close up, and I still can't. I don't know what they're trying to. I don't know.
I get it. I know exactly what they're asking.
Really?
Oh yeah, you bet.
See, that's why you're the expert. That's why it's not Family Matters with Jay Staples.
Well, I've seen this happen in recovery so many times. I'll be totally blunt with you. A good friend of mine in Denver, when he first came and he had like 30, he had 6, maybe 90 days. And I said, well, the most important thing for people in recovery is to build a relationship with their higher power. And he's like, oh, I'm a Christian. I go to church. I've already got that. And I looked at him and I said, well, here's what I'm saying. That Christian relationship you had with God didn't get you sober.
Mm.
So maybe you need to try something different. And he got pissed. And a couple of years later, we were still friends, but he got pissed at me and he came back to me. He's like, I thought you were saying I needed to quit going to church and change my faith. I said, oh no, I never said that. He said, what you were saying is my engagement in the process, I was not giving everything over to my higher power. I was still thinking I could control my drinking. I'm like, yeah, exactly. That's the reality. I said, I don't care if you go to church, yoga, CrossFit, therapy, what church you go to, what religion you belong to, doesn't matter to me. The pastor at my church in Denver, when I joined it in the late 90s, Central Presbyterian Church in downtown Denver, said, it is not my job to keep you sober. I can't do that. The church can't do that. That's AA's job. My job is to enhance your relationship with your higher power and your spirituality. And I was like, right. We're speaking the same language. And so I have seen people put religion in place of the 12-step recovery process, and I have never seen it work. And that's in 33 years of sobriety. Never seen it work. It's always people stumble or fall back. But here's the thing it's important to understand. I'm not saying don't go to church. Go to church. I think church is great. I think, temple, church, whatever your thing is, man, mosque, whatever, Sundance, whatever. I'm all for it. But it's not in place of 12-step recovery. 12-step recovery is the foundation that gets you to a space where you can engage more honestly and openly in therapy and your faith, et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up. It does. I grew up in the church. My mom's the original church lady. I went to private grade school and high school and so forth. But I knew the whole time it was there was never a true connection.
Yeah.
There. And when I got into recovery, that a true connection was formed, a different connection than what I was when I was growing up. And when you were talking, it reminds me, a couple of months back, we lost a really close mentor who's in our men's group in 35, 30, maybe 38 years of sobriety. And his funeral was in this big church in the rich part of Dallas, and it was packed. And the pastor during the sermon of the funeral tells this story that he was at this national pastor conference or whatever, and he was sitting on a panel, and someone asked him, like, how do you improve the culture of your church? Like, what are some of the ways, and do you believe you can improve the culture of your church? And the pastor said, it was his turn, and he said, well, one way I do is I invite more alcoholics into our congregation. And he said everyone was like, what the heck? And so he literally had a line of people afterwards. He goes, what do you mean? And when he said in the sermon, he went down the line. He's like, if you look at the 12 steps of AA, that's what you want in your congregation. If you go down the list, and 90% of the people in that were all AA people there to support Jack, but there were some normals in there, and they're like, oh my God, and so if you look at the principles of the 12 steps and you put that into a congregation, he's dead on. It was the best sermon I've ever heard put into that context. So, and he's onto something. So,
100%. I think the clergy or people of faith or whatever you want to call them, the ones that understand us, that get us, they're like, oh my God. And they're the first ones to be like, go, the ones that don't, they may see us as a threat or whatever. But here's the thing I'll tell you, having served on a lot of service committees in AA, that's our fault. That's not their fault. Yeah. Their ignorance and the therapists and the doctors, that's the 12-step recovery community's fault, that they haven't done a better job outreaching and saying, hey, we're your partner. We're not here to oppose you. We're not here to tell you you're wrong. No. We're here to say, send them to us. We got them. And then we'll send them right back to you, but I think the misunderstanding, and especially in the therapeutic community, is so tremendous because they just don't know, and what's their experience? People coming into therapy saying, oh, I tried AA, that was crap. You know, it's all religious. It's like, come on, you know. So that's where, like, you know, I'll talk to other therapists and I'm like, do I strike you as a religious person? And they're like, no. I'm like, maybe I'm the anomaly.
Yes, you are, Kevin. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Well, Kevin, you're on Heisman in my book every week. So you brought it this week. Tune in next week. We'll do this all over again. I will search the earth looking for questions to stump Kevin. But
I look forward.
anyway,
All right, brother.
once again, Kevin, always a pleasure.